Thank you very much. I would come on the floor just after two wonderful presentations by two women. Third woman on the stage, and you might wonder, what might this look like if instead of three women, you had three men? Of course you know, you say, I know, because I always go to conferences where it's mostly men on the stage, and a presenter that was Veronique too, as another woman. So I know this, but you don't know, because if we had been men, we would look different, we had different height, different voice, we would use different words, we would act differently. In a way, what I'm thinking about and what this is about is the impossible experiment. What would a man look like if he were a woman and talked, spoke, behaved, acted, stuttered as a woman, and vice versa? So that's what I want to talk to you about today, an experiment that tries to do that. For example, what would have the world look like, or what would we have now if Marine Le Pen had been a man and if Emmanuel Macron had been a woman? Would the world look as it just looks right now? Well, that was the question I was asking myself back in October 2016 when I was looking at the presidential debates between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. As I saw the verbal and nonverbal exchanges, I wondered, what would this look like if Trump was a woman and Clinton was a man? So this is a picture from the first presidential debate. A picture from the second presidential debate. Many of you must have seen some of these, and you recognize the two candidates. Second presidential debate, still third presidential debate. So how many of you saw the debates, either excerpts or read about them? So quite a few. How many of you know these people? Okay, everybody. The nice thing about this is that you know who they are, you know what they look like, and now you're going to see what happens afterwards. So if you think back at the presidential debates, it's just slow. I think it just takes time. So think about your personal reaction to the two candidates and how would you describe those. Can I have a few quick reactions? How would you describe positive and negative traits of Donald Trump as in the debate performances? And let's try to keep it short. Aggressive? Giving less. Lecturing? Assertive? Patronizing? Callous? Kind of stupid? Sure? Okay, what about Clinton? A few quick reactions. How would you describe? Strong? Powerful? Analytical? Kind, intelligent? In command? Controlling? So when we did this experiment, we actually have asked our audiences how they would describe these two candidates. And these are some of the positive and negative that came from Trump. Similar to what you said, Donald Trump, dominant, strong, loud, confident, aggressive, spontaneous, ignorant, rude, authoritarian, lying, interrupting, ill-informed, incoherent. For Clinton, the positives were knowledgeable, calm, confident, experienced, funny. We also asked negatives, and there was all for both. Arrogant, boring, self-satisfied, stiff. And analytical is an interesting one, because someone mentioned this as a negative trait. I think particularly in a country like France, and as an economist and a researcher, I think analytical is a positive trait. So, but someone listed it there, and anyway, but you see, it's sort of the reaction that you have. We see Clinton as someone who was calm, confident, sure of herself, knowledgeable, whereas Trump had a more aggressive role. So with this background, we thought, well let's do an experiment. And when I was watching the presidential debates, I thought, well, what would this look like had we inverted gender? So I'm an economist and I'm a researcher. I don't do theater, but I happen to know somebody, Joe Salvatore, who's a professor at NYU and a theater director, who has experience with documentary theater, which is taking real-world experiences and putting them in the theater to replicating everything exactly the same as in the original word. So we replicated the presidential debates between Clinton and Trump, excerpts of the presidential debates. where the words are the same, the gestures are the same, the movements are the same. The actors did an amazing work in actually recreating everything exactly the same, but with the genders inverted. Of course, other things changes. Now we're in a theater. The people are changed too. It's not Clinton doing Trump and Trump doing Clinton. We could not get them to cast our experience. And so we did this experiment, and this is the actress that's going to play Trump, Rachel Wharton. That's, you see, at NYU, where they were rehearsing. You see the video at the back. So they were really working hard to replicate exactly the excerpts. And for those who are interested in watching the full debate performance, as we did it, I will show the full video in a workshop after, in the following session at 11:30. What I'm going to show you today is, or now, it's a very short excerpt of that. So the project took a life of its own, just like the world took a life of its own. When I had this idea originally, it was in October, November 2016. Then November 8th came, and while everybody thought, and I hoped Hillary would win the election, Trump won. So now we were, what are we doing with this project? Now Trump won the election, and we were in rehearsal at the time. We had our premiere in New York City, and we use this as a research exercise too, to try and see how people's perception change before and after. So we did questionnaires of the audience before, just as I did with you, and then after, what was the reaction of the audience, and we have some data that I'll be showing you in a second. So this was January 2016. The play was very successful, as in people were eager to see what happens and to see the whole play. We had a 2-month run off-Broadway in New York City. We were even nominated for an award. So what's an economist being nominated for an Off-Broadway Alliance Award? This is really, the project took a complete life of its own. It received a lot of media attention, and in April 2017, MSNBC, a major TV network in the US, called us to reproduce an excerpt on TV. So what I'm going to show you is that recording, the recording of the TV showing of 3 minutes of her opponent.
All right, are you ready for this? Some experimental political theater. Pretend it's the fall of 2016 all over again. The presidential campaign is heating up. It is debate night. This time, though, the genders are reversed. Let me introduce you to the participants here. We have the moderator, then we have Brenda King, the Republican nominee, aka Donald Trump, and then we have on the other side of the stage Jonathan Gordon, the Democratic nominee, aka Hillary Clinton. And as we pick things up, it is Jonathan Gordon who is speaking.
Well, I actually think the most important question of this evening, Chris, is finally, will Brenda King admit and condemn that the Russians are doing this and make it clear that she will not have the help of Putin in this election, that she rejects Russian espionage against Americans, which she actually encouraged in the past? Those are the questions we need to have answered. We've never had anything like this happen in any of our elections before. Well,
that was a great pivot off the fact that he wants open borders, okay? How did we get on to Putin?
Hold on. No, wait, hold on, because this could end up getting out of control.
So just to finish on the borders?
Yes.
He wants open borders. People are going to pour into our country. People are going to come in from Syria. He wants 550% more people than Barack Obama, and he has thousands and thousands of people. They have no idea where they come from. And you see, we are going to stop radical Islamic terrorism in this country. He won't even mention the words, and neither will President Obama. So I just want to tell you, he wants open borders. Now we can talk about Putin. I don't know Putin. He said nice things about me. If we got along well, that would be good. If Russia and the United States got along well and went after ISIS, that would be good. He has no respect for him. He has no respect for our president. And I'll tell you what, we're in very serious trouble because we have a country with tremendous numbers of nuclear warheads. 1,800, by the way, where they expanded and we didn't. 1,800 nuclear warheads, and he's playing chicken. Look,
wait.
Putin, from everything I see, has no respect for this person.
Well, that's because he'd rather have a puppet as president of the United States.
No puppet.
And it's pretty clear.
You're the puppet.
You won't admit that the
puppet.
Russians have engaged in cyber attacks against the United States of America, that you've encouraged espionage against our people, that you were willing to spout the Putin line, sign up for his wish list, break up NATO, do whatever he wants to do, and that you continue to get help from him because he has a very clear favorite in this race. So I think this is such an unprecedented situation. We've never had a foreign government trying to interfere in any of our election. We have 17 intelligence agencies, civilian and military, who have all concluded that these espionage attacks, these cyber attacks, come from the highest levels of the Kremlin, and they are designed to influence our election. I find that deeply disturbing.
He has no idea whether it's Russia, China, or anybody else.
Well, I am not quoting myself here. I am quoting
Jonathan,
17.
You have no idea.
17. Do you doubt
our country
17
has no
military
idea.
and civilian agencies?
I doubt it.
Well, she'd rather believe Vladimir Putin than the civilian and military intelligence professionals who are sworn to protect us. I find that just absolutely
because
terrifying.
Putin has outsmarted him at every step of the way. Excuse me. Putin has outsmarted him in Syria. He's outsmarted him every step of the way.
I do get to ask some questions.
Yes, that's fine.
And I would like to ask you this direct question. The top national security officials of this country do believe that Russia has been behind the attacks. Even if you don't know for sure whether they are, do you condemn any interference by Russia in the American election?
By Russia or anybody else? No idea.
17, do you doubt
our country has no
military
idea.
All right. So, quick reaction. What changed? Did you perceive anything was different? Body language. What struck you about body language? Hmm? Yeah. Other.
She was very still also, which gave her command. And the guy who was playing the woman, he was very sort of talked too much and all of this.
Yeah, too wordy for the male, the man, Jonathan Gordon, and more in command. Do you see the in command behavior? Any other quick reactions? Yeah. So, yeah. So you see the smile in Hillary much more clearly in the male character. Is this what you expected you would see? Sort of. Yes. No. So let me tell you, as I say, so those interested in watching the full representation of the debates, which is 35 minutes long, I will show it later, and you'll see the full performance. So this was a quick excerpt, and it's interesting how what they're talking about resonates so much with what's happening today still. So let me summarize some of the lessons of what we have, I think, discovered. Because when I started this, I had a very clear prior on how this would look like. I had a strong prior that Donald Trump would look better, would look worse as a woman, and Hillary Clinton would look better as a man. That they would be more, she would look more presidential, and we would accept more her as a leader, going back to, and the opposite as a man. When you do this impersonation, where, as I say, it's the impossible experiment, because we're making somebody inhabit the word of the opposite gender, lots of things that I did not expect at all started happening. And we've been collecting responses from the audience, and everything I'm going to show you, every code comes from the responses from anonymous surveys to the reactions. And I think they summarize a lot of the lessons very well. So what this shows us is it's an exercise in how your priors move from where they start. The majority of the audience seeing this tends to say, oh, I like Hillary Clinton less as a man, and Donald Trump more as a woman, so there's this change in perception, or I dislike Donald Trump less, but that depends on where you come from, because I've heard people say, I hated Hillary Clinton, and now I like her more as a man. And there were people say the second quote here, I was a Trump voter and went into this expecting to love Brenda King and hate Jonathan Gordon, and I came out mixed. So there's someone who liked Trump and didn't like him, who actually doesn't like Trump as much as a woman. And it's interesting to see also who likes and more likes them better, who changes their perception as a result of that. So it's really about how your priors move. I think that it's not necessarily the case that everybody has a unique conclusion on this, but you'd see where the priors move depending on where they started. And I think there's also cultural differences, right? The different cultures have different expectations on how the different genders should behave and how aggressive behavior from a man or a woman is tolerated. Those cultures tend to say that they really don't like the female Trump, and they maybe even like her less as a woman. So one is that it's an experiment that moves your allows you to see where your priors started, and it's an experiment in perception. We're not controlling for everything, of course, because many things are changing when we go into the theater, so it's not the ideal experiment, but it's as close to ideal as it goes, and it's an experiment in perception in the sense that we're subjected to experiments all the time. Some of the research that was being mentioned before, that I was mentioning before, is about experimenting with people. But when you're in an experiment, you don't know you're part of an experiment. When we go to the supermarket and the chocolate one day is on the bottom right and the next day is at the top, the supermarket is trying to figure out where you're going to buy more, on this side or on the other side. When you go on a website and you see one day it's one color and another person is another color, they're trying to see who's going to click more depending on where I put the pictures, the banners, the colors. But you don't know you're part of an experiment. In our experiment, you know you're part of an experiment. You came in having a feeling for these two candidates. You know that it is an experiment, we're changing the genders, and you're your own control group. So it allows you to see how your emotions, but it goes a lot about the emotional reaction rather than pure intellectual reaction, how your emotion changes when we switch these candidates. And there's something that is rare to access, right? We have intellect and emotion operating in different places, and it's hard to access one to another. Therapists and psychologists try to do that to help the two navigate from another. But here is exactly what we're doing. You're your own control group, and you see how your emotional reaction to these candidates changes when this thing is being perceived. And the learning is really in this dialogue between the intellectual analysis of why is it that I'm feeling differently now? What am I seeing differently? And I think being inside a theater has allowed us to do a lot of this. So this goes back to the Brechtian's theory of estrangement, where the idea to put you in a theater is to have this distancing so that you're able to more critically evaluate. But what I think this does is exactly that, plus on top of this, do this experiment of you with yourself and your emotions. So it's an experiment in perception. That's a second lesson that we learned that is interesting. Then to the gender question. So why do we see them differently? The most common change in perception from the original debates to the right debates is exactly what you were mentioning, is that people see Jonathan Gordon as a woman, her behavior as weak. This smiling, nodding is perceived as weak. In fact, the actor speaks about this very, very, very eloquently. He says that being in Hillary Clinton's body, he doesn't have space to move. It's all very constrained. Whereas the actress loves being Trump. She doesn't like Donald Trump at all, but she loves being Trump. He says, there's no female roles like this. In Donald Trump, I can move, I can gesticulate, I yell, I'm very loud, whereas the female roles that I'm used to play don't allow for this kind of extroversion. So you really see this, I think, very strongly here, and that's what we find a little bit disturbing when we do this gender change. Hillary was criticized when she didn't smile enough before, and the smiles seem forced. The smiles, what is seen as, we see her in Hillary Clinton as command and control and confidence, is seen as weakness and submissiveness when done by a man. So that's something that comes, I think, very clearly. Whereas on the other hand, a lot of audience reactions is that it's great to have this woman in control and assertive and extending herself. She inspires confidence and trust. And people mention a lot trust in her, and because it's a woman, some people say that it's because it's a woman, or also feeling this trust and passion. So what's aggressiveness in Trump is perceived more as trust and passion when you see it in the female version of Trump. The other thing that I think this allows us to do, this experiment allows us to do, is to hear better what goes on, right? When I think majority of us, Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump, I have some strong emotions already, even before they open their mouth. Then I listen and I have even stronger emotions once I hear what they say. But there's a lot of history that we're projecting. So we're not able to listen to what they say as much. And this is not about the gender, it's really about being in a theater and not having the real characters anymore, not the real people that we were listening to. So many people were saying, I could hear what Trump said, and I understand why he won, because he was appealing to a particular emotion that he got to the gut of his voters. So I think that these distances has allowed me, and I think many of our audiences, to understand better what's going on, because it gives you enough of a remove, but enough of reality to have some interesting analysis. So you hear the message more. And I also think people heard very clearly Trump's debating technique and how good it was. And then this takes me to the final lesson, if you will, which is what about democracy and the press. So if people are so moved by this experiment, you start asking yourself, wow, how easy can I be manipulated? And one of the most powerful quotes that we've received from our audiences is the first one, at least for me. Someone said, "Tonight was a bit frightening as I experienced on myself what I always thought is true of others, the speed and ease and with which I can be manipulated by form." Right? So you really see how easy it is to manipulate, how easy we all are to be manipulated. Another audience member took this to a more dark place. This experience reinforces my reaction to the Clinton-Trump election year. Can human beings really be trusted with the responsibility for representative government? I take it on the positive side. I think this allows you to see what should we be telling people and how should we be talking to people and what should we be helping people with so that they make informed decisions, right? So that we can have the distance and the analysis that you're not so easily manipulated. So it's a bit of a call for awareness. So back to France, if we go back to and I'll go very quickly on this, back to France and the debates, now let's rethink with what you just saw, back at this image, Macron and Le Pen. And people have said, oh, Le Pen is like a female Trump, and Macron has some feminine quality. So there's something that people talked about the press a lot. She has a quote saying, oh, I think I lost because I was too passionate. But as I was looking back at the debates, what do you see in Le Pen? Here's one. And here's another, and here's another. She's smiling all the time. So there's also this thing we don't even see, that there's this smile coming out. So we can revisit that, but I'm not going to talk more about these debates. So what are the lessons of this for women? Since this is a forum where we care about gender roles in a way, I think that what's unique about this experiment is that you will experience in your gut what some of the people in this conference will talk to you about. Some of what you heard from our previous speakers already were hinting at some of what happens here. But I think what this does is that it makes you experience it. It's very different to talk about it on a purely intellectual level and to learn it emotionally. And I think that we discovered a tool. I did not predict that this would happen, by the way, that this would do what it does. It triggers a different sort of learning. And some thoughts on how we present ourselves as women. Being more expressive is not bad, because people like the female Trump. Maybe we should smile less and try to be less accommodating and nodding, because that is a sign of weakness. And maybe we should exploit the trust advantage a little more. So there's some lessons that we think about ourselves and how we present ourselves that I think can be useful. And of course, we care a lot about women, but we also care about everybody else. And so I think that there's a lesson of, we need to keep our subconscious on, or a radar on our subconscious and potential for manipulation more active as we go through life, because, especially as citizens, all of this operates a lot at the subconscious level, and it can be really dangerous for the outcome of the world and our children to keep letting ourselves be manipulated in the way we obviously seem to be. And also it shows the importance of providing different experiences, going back to some of the points that were raised earlier, to make more natural what is sort of seen and common, right? If we didn't see women smiling and trying to smile all the time, women that don't smile would look fine. So it's like we have so very narrow stereotypes on behavior that then we need to be able to conform to the stereotypes, and it's breaking that mold is by providing more experience. And to me personally, this was a big exercise in humility, because I had this original idea, thinking I would discover one thing, and instead of confirming my initial theory, what this became is really a lot of new questions and new avenues for exploration that I actually felt. It was not my intellect said, oh no, it's going with one direction, and I was feeling, no, this is going in another direction. So it's a sense of humility we go too much through life thinking we know everything, and in fact, that's really not true. So thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Maria. There was really a good laugh as well.